$5,000 clock.
I want to make history. And that's what this is.
It takes four things to create success. One, you got to have the...
So we are on set.
Welcome to Sephora.
Hi. Can I help you with something?
Anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is wise, like a person who builds a house on solid rock. Though the rain comes in torrents and the flood waters rise and the winds beat against that house, it won't collapse because it is built on bedrock. But anyone who hears my teaching and doesn't obey it is foolish, like a person who builds a house on sand. When the rains and the floods come and the winds beat against that house, it will collapse with a mighty crash.
So I cannot start a fire to save my life. And I mean that literally. I've told my family many times if we got stranded in the wilderness, unless I happened to get stranded with a can of gasoline, we would die in days. And even if that were the case, I'm not sure we would make it. I'm like the guy in the Progressive commercials. You've seen the one where the guy's trying to start a fire and all the other men who are becoming like their parents are standing around. And every time he does something like, don't do it. I'm the guy trying to make the fire. We went on vacation this summer to Kentucky to Red River Gorge, and the Airbnb that we rented had this nice fire pit in the backyard. I had dry logs, newspaper, a lighter, and a fire starter. And I still could not get it going. We were supposed to roast marshmallows. We smoked them instead. And if you're wondering if they're just as good, they are not. They're not good at all. What's frustrating about not being able to start a fire is that in theory, I understand how it works. So I should be able to do it. Like I know that a fire requires something that ignites, like a heat source, some kind of fuel, and oxygen. And you just need those things. And so you have an igniter that it sets some kind of fuel on to a flame, to an ember, and then you nurture that ember until it grows. I know in theory how it works. And so I know that if you have a little ember, like a very small flame, it's like next to nothing, you can't put a log on that. It'll snuff it out. It's too much. It's not powerful enough to handle that kind of dense fuel. But I also know that even if you get a fire going and you've got it going, if you don't keep feeding it appropriately, eventually it will go out. So this is week 3 of a series that I'm calling Follow Me. If you have not been here, in our last series, what we talked about was God meets all people right where they are. So many of you have had this experience where at some point in your life, you were in need. Something was going on. You were struggling in your personal life, in your marriage, with your kids, at your job, with your health. You lacked a sense of meaning or purpose or direction, or you were looking for some place to belong, and you turned to faith. You went to church, you went to a camp, you went to a youth club, you did something. And in that experience, you were confronted by a God of love who met you right where you were, met you in your need, whatever that need was, and gave you the gift of himself, God's extravagant love, and it changed your life. You're probably here because you had that kind of experience. But God does not meet us where we are, meet us in our need, so that we can then just go spend the rest of our lives being passive, though grateful, passive recipients of his benevolence. We're just thankful, but we pretty much live life on our terms. The whole point of meeting us where we are is to kind of call us out of it. So the way that the language I'm using in this series is, yes, God says to all people, come as you are. It's the only way that you can come to God, and it's designed that way. Come as you are. But after God says to people, come as you are, he then says, come follow me. And what we saw last week is following Jesus is not something that you are going to do. Not the first time he calls you, or not any subsequent day that he calls you. You're not going to do it unless you really want to do it. Unless there's a part of you that's like, this is what I want most. Ultimately, you're going to do the thing that you want to do most. So if following Jesus is not what you most want, there's going to come a day when Jesus calls you to follow him and you're going to say no. Now let's imagine for a moment you have any desire at all to follow Jesus. I want you to think about it like a fire. Maybe it's just a little bit. Maybe that desire is not very big right now. Maybe you're someone who would say, yeah, no, I've been doing this Jesus thing for a while. Like I feel like I've got a pretty strong desire to be faithful to Jesus. Either way, whether it's just a kind of small ember flickering flame or you feel like you've got something bigger going on, if you do not feed it appropriately, it's going to die out. When it comes to the spiritual life, that desire that you have to honor, to follow Jesus, the fuel for that, the fuel for it is obedience. Meaning, if you are going to keep being the person who keeps saying yes to Jesus, you have to say yes to Jesus. I know that sounds obvious, but just like a fire, if at any point in your life you become that person who no longer thinks that doing the things Jesus actually tells you to do is important, then you're going to become a person for whom following Jesus is no longer important. Now, the passage I selected for this morning comes from what we now call the Sermon on the Mount. This is like Jesus' summation of life in his kingdom, what it looks like to be his people in the world. So like Moses gave the people of Israel the law and the 10 Commandments. We in our country, we have a constitution and we have a Bill of Rights. Those are the documents that kind of govern our shared life together. I want you to think of the Sermon on the Mount like Jesus' document. It's the governing document for the people who are going to follow him in this world. The sermon starts with a declaration of the blessed life. And I love that Jesus starts this way because his version of the blessed life is not your version of the blessed life. So right out of the chute, it's like Jesus is looking at people and saying, do you really want the life that I offer or not? Because I know when I'm counting my blessings, I'm counting things like I'm healthy, I'm happy, I have a wonderful spouse, I've got great kids, they're happy, they're healthy, they're mostly doing what I asked them to do, we're comfortable. When I'm praying and I'm counting my blessings, those are the things that I consider the blessed life, which is just a great indicator of how much I don't listen to Jesus. Because his version of the blessed life is that I am someone who recognizes my need for God. That I'm someone who mourns appropriately over the things that happen in this world. That I'm someone who cares about justice and righteousness. That I'm merciful. That I'm humble. That I'm a peacemaker. That I'm pure in heart. That's Jesus' vision of the blessed life. Not what you have, but who you have become because of who he is. So right away, Jesus is saying, you need to be real honest about the life you actually want. Now, if you're still listening, if you actually want the life that I have on offer, he does something really interesting. He warns his listeners. He says to them, do not misunderstand why I am here and why I have come. I did not come to abolish the law or the prophets. I came to fulfill them. I came to accomplish their purpose. Here's what I think he means. Jews in Jesus' day, in his culture, they had a lot of rules to follow. Like over 600 rules that governed their everyday life. All kinds of do's and don'ts. You can eat this, you can't eat that, you can go there, you can't go there, you can't wear that, can't talk to those people, don't touch that, got to sacrifice this over here, don't carry that, at least not that far. Lots of rules. So many rules, so many religious, social, ethical, moral do's and don'ts that if I'm imagining the life of the average person in Jesus' culture, I'm imagining someone who's just like you, that if given hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of do's and don'ts, you probably have no idea where most of them came from and have no idea why you are supposed to or not supposed to keep any of them. You feel very out of touch, which probably creates something of a religious imposter syndrome. A lot of people going to synagogue every week going, yeah, I didn't do most of the rules this week. Truth be told, I don't really understand them or why they're important. I'm just kind of hoping nobody finds out. Which also creates a little resentment toward religious leaders. You know, it's our job to make sure that you know the rules and that you're keeping them, but you don't know what they are or where they come from or why they're important, and you can't keep them anyway. So then you get frustrated with religious leaders for making you do things that everybody knows are stupid and you can't do them. Most churches are filled. That's the environment most of us feel like we're in. I'm sure it was very similar in Jesus' day. I don't know that they were much more religious in that sense than we are. They had very mixed emotions about all the do's and don'ts. So I think it is very interesting that at the outset of the most important sermon of his career, the sermon that is going to put him on the map, Jesus addresses how his audience relates to rules. And he says, I don't misunderstand me. I didn't come to get rid of the rules. I came to fulfill them. So if I were going to paraphrase this, here's what I think Jesus is saying to them. He's saying, listen, everybody, I'm about to tell you a bunch of stuff. Most of it you've never heard before. It is possible for you to interpret what I mean as the rules aren't important anymore. You don't have to keep them. That would be a huge misunderstanding. I did not come to get rid of them. I came to bring them to life, to fulfill them, to accomplish them, and or so that you can. You know, we make a big deal in the Christian church about the greatest commandments, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. We make a big deal about those things because Jesus made a big deal about those. Jesus said, all of the laws, so all the laws that Jews in his day were required to obey, all of them, Jesus said, are summed up by these two. What he means is every law that they were asked to keep, the ultimate purpose of all of those laws, right? Don't touch that, don't go there, don't wear that, don't eat this. All of those laws, as silly as it sounds to us, all of those laws were about structuring their life so that the output was God-honoring, that they were actually loving their God with their hearts, minds, souls, and bodies and loving their neighbor as they love themselves. It just was doing that the way laws always do it, externally. So the idea here is, okay, you are not spiritually mature enough for us to trust that you are going to do the right things for the right reasons. So, to make sure that you do the right things, we're just going to tell you what those things are, and then we're going to threaten you with serious consequences if you don't do them. And the hope is that the threat of that consequence is so severe, so significant, it will essentially scare you enough to stay on the straight and narrow. But of course, that's a terrible way to live your life. It's okay when you're 5. That's a terrible way to live if you're 40 or 50 or 60. The whole idea is at some point, you grow up as a human being so that you do the right things for the right reasons. One way to think about why Jesus came is for that he came so people could come of age, so they could grow up and become the people that they're supposed to be. Now, if you have ever raised other human beings from childhood into adulthood, there's this terrible, horrible season in the middle that's adolescence and teenage and young adulthood. We all wish we could skip it. It's like because it's dangerous. is an incredibly dangerous window. When they're down here, you can pretty much keep them safe with all your rules and consequences. But to get them here, right, you have to unleash them a little bit. And it can be an incredibly dangerous thing. One of the things that happens, and it happened to every one of you, it happened to me, is you get somewhere through this adolescent teenage world and you've convinced yourself you already know everything. And so therefore, you no longer have to obey any of the rules that you were given when you were younger. That you're done with those. The same thing happens spiritually. I don't know that if you know this. Okay, we have become the kind of church that tends to attract and has gotten pretty good at nurturing this kind of faith transition. We get a lot of people who come here who maybe they grew up in a church environment, they were given all the do's and don'ts, and then they get to a certain point where the answers that they were given when they were younger or the way that they were taught to live, they hit a wall. Those answers aren't satisfying anymore, and they need to start critically scrutinizing the faith that they were handed when they were young. That's an appropriate, necessary, important step in faith formation. Everyone needs to do that. Churches are not typically set up to help you do it, so it can be a very, very dangerous season. And one of the things that I have encountered over and over and over and over again is people who enter this phase of kind of deconstructing, reconstructing their faith. They can get themselves to a place where they start thinking, well, I don't believe all that silly stuff that I used to believe. I'm more mature now, and therefore that stuff doesn't matter anymore. I don't have to do those things anymore. I think that is the kind of thing, the misunderstanding that Jesus is talking about on the front end of this sermon. He's come to bring people of age, but he knows that to bring you of age, you are going to have to start negotiating with some of the do's and don'ts you've lived with your whole life. And he wants to just get right to it. Don't think that you can just disregard them. They're just as important as they were. I'm going to teach you how to keep them, but to keep them for a different reason, not because you have to. See, to think about rules in terms of have to, I used to think I have to. And now I don't think I have to. You're still thinking about it in terms of have to. To think about it in terms of have to is to still be in that immature place. The place that Jesus wants to bring you up into is a place where you do because you want to. I've used this example many times. I use it in my book if you've read it. We put speed limits everywhere. The reason we have speed limits is because we want to keep people reasonably safe. We don't want to keep you totally safe. Nobody wants to keep you totally safe. Anytime somebody says safety is our first priority, no, it's not. Safety is not your first priority. Safety is our priority. It's involved. But if safety were our only priority or our top priority, every street would be like a senior citizen compound in Florida where you drive a golf cart at 7.5 miles per hour. Safety is not our chief priority, but we do want to keep people reasonably safe. And so we look at roads and we go, okay, this road's going from here to there. Here's the surrounding area. Okay, that one can be 55. This road over here, this is in a different area. There's some houses around. This is going to be 35. Okay, this road over here, this is in a neighborhood. This is nothing but houses and kids with soccer balls. That's 25. And we put those speed limits up because we want to keep people reasonably safe. Now, if you are a young, inexperienced, immature driver, you probably don't keep any of those speed limits, because you don't care about other people. This is the nature of being young. You care about you. You want to get where you want to get, and you're going to get there as fast as you can get. If you do keep the speed limit, I can almost guarantee the reason for that is because you don't want to get caught. Because if you get caught, you might get a ticket. That might damage your license. You might lose your license, your car, or whatever. If you are an older, more experienced, more mature driver, I would hope that you would keep the speed limit, not because you're worried about getting caught, but because you understand why it is what it is. And your primary concern is to honor why you have it, which is to keep people reasonably safe. So here's the situation we run into. Young, inexperienced, immature drivers, they can obey the speed limit, but almost always not for the right reasons. They just don't want to get caught. Now, that's better than not. I'd rather have them drive the speed limit for the wrong reason than not drive it at all. But it would be silly, wouldn't it? It would be stupid and dangerous if older, more experienced, more mature drivers said to themselves, well, I'm more mature, I'm older, I'm more experienced. Those silly speed limits, they don't apply to me anymore. So I can drive 45 in a 25 or 50 in a 25. No, because if you did that, you would be violating the very reason we have them in the first place. You can keep the letter of a command. You can keep the letter of a command without caring at all about why that command was given. You cannot honor the spirit of a command by disregarding the actual letter. You can't accomplish the spirit of something if you disregard the rules actually given to lovingly organize our relationships. And that happens to a lot of people in their faith journey. They get to a place where they tell themselves, well, I'm more mature than I used to be. I don't believe some of the things I used to believe. I have better beliefs now. I believe a better story. I believe in a bigger God, all of which is true. The mistake that we can make is then thinking that because I feel like my faith is more mature than it used to be, there are silly rules that I used to follow that I don't have to anymore. Now I can disregard those because I don't think Jesus really cares about those things anymore. Jesus cares about more important stuff. I'm going to give you another example. And this is because I've had to work through this in my own life. Still working through it, I suppose. I have to work through this in my own life. I've used the example of foul language. So in my own faith reconstructive journey, there was a time, and I've told this story many times, I used to cuss like a sailor when I was a kid. And then I had a conversion experience in high school, and I started following Jesus. And a year into my faith journey, one of my leaders came to me and was like, Mike, you have a terrible mouth. Like, you really have to watch what comes out of your mouth. And I remember thinking to myself, okay. I didn't know that. Like, I'm glad you said something I didn't know. Every New Testament author does not equivocate on this point. The Apostle Paul writes, do not let any unwholesome speech come out of your mouth. Now, you know what unwholesome speech is. You know what it is, and you know what it's not. If you didn't know, he goes on to say, nothing except what is good for building other people up in Christ. So for him, the metric is think about what you're saying, and if it does not benefit other people, don't say it. Now, I had to go through a journey, right, where, okay, I was raised then for a lot of years in there's all kinds of things you can't say. You can't say it, you can't say it, you can't say it, don't ever say it. I actually had someone in my life that passage that I just recited to you, that's from Ephesians chapter 5, and he used to E5 me. Anytime I would use a foul word or say something inappropriate or tell a joke that was off color or whatever, I had a leader in my life who was like, Mike, E5. It's like, And that was the world that I lived in for a long time. So it was just, there's things you don't say, things you do say. And then as my faith started to grow and I started to sort of navigate some other beliefs and things, I found myself feeling like I had liberty with my speech. Oh, those silly rules. Jesus doesn't care about that. Jesus cares that I love people. But I made the mistake of thinking that I could love people in some general, vague way that didn't actually involve me caring about them with my words. I hope most of us, when we imagine Jesus, we do not imagine Jesus sitting around a campfire with his disciples, dropping expletives, telling coarse jokes, or gossiping about the lady down the street. He did not live that way. He did not speak that way. He did not encourage his disciples to speak that way, and there's a reason for that. Speech is an act of love. What you say, what you don't say, to whom you say it, how you say it, what is its purpose, how does it benefit the person who is hearing it, what is it doing to their life, to their conscience, to their soul. It's an act of love. I experienced in my own life, and I have experienced this in other people's lives, that we think, well, I'm more mature now than I used to be. I don't believe the things I used to believe. My faith is better than it used to be. And so therefore I can take liberties that before I wasn't allowed to take, but still tell myself that I'm loving people. You can honor the letter of a law and not care at all about why it was given. You cannot honor the spirit of the law and not care about the actual laws. They're given for a reason, to govern our lives in love. So the point here is that when you follow Jesus, obedience matters. Actually doing the things that Jesus tells you to do or not do is important. This Sermon on the Mount, the bulk of the sermon, if you are not familiar with it, it's Matthew 5 through 7. The bulk of the sermon is all a bunch of stuff that you're supposed to do or not do. That if you are Jesus people, these are behaviors that are going to govern your life every day. But the rhetorical thrust of the sermon isn't so much the content of the sermon, but it's, are you going to do it or not? The sermon begins by Jesus saying, anybody who breaks my commands and teaches other people to do the same, and that's a teaching, either explicitly teaching or just modeling like it's okay, you will be called least in the kingdom of God. That's how the sermon starts. And then it ends with this little story that you heard this morning about a person who builds his house either on bedrock or on sand. Many of you have built houses. We built a house. How much time did you spend agonizing over the foundation of your house? None. That's the answer, none. You spent 0 time. You did not spend hours and hours and hours and hours in design meetings worried about the concrete and the rebar. You assumed the foundation. You just assumed, well, they'll take care of that. There's like code and stuff. You spent all of your time focusing on your countertops and your cabinets and your paint color and your carpet, because that's all the superficial stuff that everybody sees when they go into your house. That's the stuff that we care about. But what does it matter what kind of countertops you have if your house topples over or floods every weekend because the foundation was laid poorly? And let me be really clear here, because I think we hear this in Jesus just because of who we are. When you hear Jesus say, anybody who listens to my commands and obeys them and does them is a wise person who built his house on bedrock. And the person who listens and doesn't obey is someone who is unwise, foolish. They built their house on sand. Then Jesus says, when the torrents come and the winds blow and the rains come and all the things, your house is either going to stand or it's not going to stand. I would put money that you hear that therapeutically. That what you hear Jesus saying is, if you obey me, if you listen to me, if you have faith in me, then you'll be able to cope with the difficulties of life. That when bad things happen, because they will, you'll be able to stand up strong. I do not think Jesus' words are therapeutic. He is not a counselor. He's not interested in helping you cope. Following Jesus will help you cope. I think what he's saying to you is you can either build a life that is all about doing the things that he says to do. If you do that, you are going to become a certain kind of person. A person for whom certain ways of operating in this world have become normal. That's just your reaction to the world. When those bad things happen to you, it's going to have a very different consequence on you than it has on somebody else who has decided not to listen to anything that Jesus says. They will become a different kind of person. Someone who has a different set of skills or behaviors or attitudes and aptitudes. When bad things happen to them, they will not be able to stand those things the same way that you would be able to. This isn't a therapeutic thing. It is about the kind of life you construct depending on who you are listening to and what you are actually doing or not doing. If you are going to follow Jesus, you have to do the things that he says. That's what following is. And it has a consequence. What Jesus would say to his disciples is, if you love me, obey my commands, and your joy will be made complete. That's your experience. Jesus tells you to do something, you trust him enough to do it, and you experience joy in the doing. After the fact, you say to yourself, oh, I'm glad that I listened. Why did I doubt? Why did I struggle with this? Right? Why in my stupid, selfish pride did I think that this was not the best idea for me? I'm so glad that I said yes. And then the next time God comes to you, Jesus comes to you and says, I want you to do something, because of that experience you had, you are more likely to say, okay, I'm going to say yes this time. I remember the joy that I experienced last time. If you're going to keep following Jesus, you have to do the things he tells you to do. Maybe for no other reason than because he tells you to do them, and you don't need another reason for it. I want you to think of all the things that Jesus told people to do, that when he told them, they couldn't have made any sense. Hey, you guys, grab those big jugs over there, put some water in them, and take them over to that guy. Let him drink it. You come here, set all these thousands of people, have them sit down. Here's a loaf of bread. Go feed them. I want you to go into town, find a little boy with a pail of water, ask him where we can have dinner tonight. Just imagine the reaction to, like, excuse me, what do you want me to do? Think about this sermon, this sermon. I want you to love your enemies. I want you to pray for those who persecute you. I want you to do good to people who hate you. I want you to give. Giving is not an option. I want you to give, and I want you to do it in a way that doesn't make you look good to other people. I want you to fast. It's not an option. I want you to give stuff up, but I want you to do it in a way that doesn't make you look good to other people. I want you to pray. You are to pray, but when you pray, I want you to pray this way. Don't be anxious. The whole sermon is a bunch of stuff that he wants you to do or not do, and I imagine most of the things that he said to people at first didn't make sense to them. They had to decide, am I going to do it because Jesus asked me to do it or told me to do it or not? And when they did, they experienced joy. I want you to think about that scene at the wedding. Jesus tells some attendants that they're just there. They're just doing their job. He says, go fill those jugs with water and then give them to your boss. They did it. Their boss drinks the water that had become wine, not just any wine, like the best wine he'd ever had. But the story says he had no idea where it came from. The attendants knew. They knew because they did what they were told to do. Jesus brought them into the story and gave them an opportunity to be a part of it. And all they had to do was do the thing he told them to do, even if it didn't make sense to them. They got to experience joy in a way that the master of ceremonies did not. He got to experience the effect. They got to experience the joy of the why. This is that fire I'm talking about. If you are going to grow in your desire to follow Jesus and your obedience to Jesus, you have to do the things he tells you to do. There is no spirituality, there is certainly no spirituality that could be called mature, where we think that doing or honoring Jesus is somehow up here and it disregards any kind of specific things that you have to do or not do on a daily basis. If you want to keep following Jesus and grow in your desire to follow him, you have to do the things that he says. Now, you can put that stuff in two categories. You can put it in the specific will category. So specific will means that thing that Jesus wants for you right now, just you specifically, not me, you, in this season right now. Do I marry this person? Do I go to this school? Do I take that job? Do we move? We send our kids to this school or that school, right? And we all have those decisions. You might have one in your life right now that you're thinking about. There's a decision you have to make. You're not sure what to do. You're hoping God might have some direction for you, and you'd really like to know what that is. In my 15 years of pastoring, I've had many of those conversations. Hey, can you help me work through this thing and maybe tell me what Jesus might want me to do? You know a conversation I've not had very many times? I've not had a conversation about what I would call God's general will, where someone comes and says, Mike, I just want to be more obedient to Jesus. How do I do that? I haven't had many of those conversations. Most of us are obsessed with wanting to know what Jesus wants us to do with our life, but we don't seem to care nearly as much about how Jesus wants us to actually live that life. Now, I don't want to devalue the specific will stuff. That's important stuff. But I'm going to tell you, I would encourage you to focus on the things that you already know. You already have Jesus' life. You already have his teachings. He either specifically said it, or you can very, very easily deduce it from his life. Things that you ought to do and things that you ought not to do. It is a wild fantasy for me to think that Jesus is going to give me some specific direction on some decision in my life if I have spent my whole life communicating to him that I don't care what he wants me to do. So start here. What's one thing? I bet you already know what it is. I bet you came in this morning and this is already on your conscience. I don't know what it is, but I bet you do. I bet you have one. What's one thing, just one thing, that you're pretty sure you're doing, and you're pretty sure Jesus would like you to stop doing it? Stop doing it. Just honor him and cut it out. You know what it is, right? Stop consuming so much. Stop buying everything. Stop distracting yourself. Stop making everything about you. Stop judging other people. Stop worrying so much. You know what it is. There's one thing that you're pretty sure Jesus is saying, I want you to stop doing that. If you want the fire of desire to grow, you got to obey. What's one thing you're not doing that you're pretty sure Jesus would say, I want you to start doing this? Next week, we're going to talk about the most important one. Jesus says, I want you to be with me. I want you to abide with me. Most of you attend church occasionally, and outside of that, I'm guessing you spend little or no time with Jesus. And that, I'm not shaming you in that. I'm saying you will never learn to imitate someone you spend no time with. You will imitate the people that you spend time with. You will mimic their thoughts, their ideas, their perspectives, their convictions, their beliefs. So if you leave this place and you spend lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of time consuming data and information and perspectives and opinions from everyone under the sun, but you don't spend a moment with Jesus, you're not going to look like him. You're not going to sound like him. You're not going to think like him. You're not going to live like him. Abide in me. Give. Serve. Pray. Fast. Pick one. Anyone. Just pick one. Think of it like just that little piece of combustible material that you can put on the flame and it'll grow. You don't have to do everything, but pick something as a way of saying to Jesus, I actually want to follow you, and so I'm going to do something you're telling me to do, or I'm going to stop doing something you're telling me to stop doing. If you love me, obey my commands, and your joy will be complete. We're going to finish our service this morning by taking communion together. Everyone is welcome to take communion. If you're new here, I invite you to come to the table. We come to the sacrament of communion, the bread that represents Jesus' broken body and the juice that represents his shed blood. It's a sacrament of remembrance. The first thing that you're doing is you are remembering who your God is. A God who is worth listening to, worth obeying, not just being thankful for, but listening to, doing what he says. You are following someone or a smattering of someone's. Jesus is the only one worth following. You're commanded to love God because God is worth loving. He proved that to us on the cross. But this is also a sacrament of participation. To come forward and take these elements today for you, it is at least your way of saying, I actually want to follow Jesus, and that's not theory. I really do want to do the things that he tells me to do. And this week I'm going to find something, and I'm going to start building a little obedience around it. If that's the life you want, then you're invited to come forward. Come be a part of the church. If you've not done this before, just in a minute, I'll invite everybody to stand. I'll invite you to come down our center aisle here. We'll have communion distributors on both sides of the stage. They will say to you the body and blood of Christ. I invite you to say amen. And then you'll take a prepackaged communion cup back to your seat using the side aisles, and you can take those elements during this last song as you feel led. I'll come up in a couple minutes to close our service. Stand with me if you're able, and then come to the table. God, we thank you for your great love. It is your grace always. It is your grace always that allows us to move in the spiritual journey, to grow up. I pray that we would not take that grace for granted, that we wouldn't use your mercy as a way of justifying living how we want to live, but that we really would care and pay attention to what you tell us, recognizing in it goodness and life. We really do want to love you, and we want to love the people around us. I pray that everything we do or don't do, that we're filtering it through that expression. Is this benefiting people? Does it really love them the way you love us? Give us the faith this week to live that way. Do a good work in us through these elements. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
You are our God. We are your temple. surrender.